Why do we need to talk to a therapist? That's been one of the biggest questions that I've gotten in my DMs about what's the difference? What is the difference between talking to a friend or a family member and seeing a therapist? Some of you have even expressed that your parents didn't believe you needed therapy because you had a great set of friends or you could talk to them. And I get it. Some of you got really lucky with those types of people in your life. And sometimes it may feel like, well, we can handle this on our own. We don't really need to talk to anybody. And plus, how could that help anyway? Why would telling my problems to a random stranger help me? Well, that's what this video is all about. I'm going to tell you how therapy helps and why it's different. But first, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I am so glad that you're here. I make videos once a week about mental health topics, so make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the like button so that YouTube shows my video to more people that may need it. And if you're coming back, welcome back. I am so happy that you're here. Please make sure to like this video. Again, the more you like it, the more likely that my video will be shown to more people, therefore helping people that may not otherwise have access to mental health. Let's get started. So, what's the difference between therapy and talking to a friend? Well, first of all, let's start with number one. Whenever you see a therapist, the whole hour that you come in to talk to that therapist, that hour is dedicated to you and you only. You get to talk about the things that you need to talk about in a judgment and bias-free zone. So the therapist doesn't talk about themselves, you'll get to talk about yourself. The therapist will probably ask you questions that you've never really thought of before. They'll ask you open-ended questions to pull out information about why it is that you're feeling a certain way, or what may have triggered it, or what kind of coping skills you've been using that may or may not be helpful. All questions that typically don't come from friends and family. So when we talk to friends and family, they typically jump right in to try to help us. They jump right in to try to fix us and tell us what we should or shouldn't be doing. And although that can be helpful sometimes, it can sometimes feel invalidating, and it can sometimes feel like they don't get it. They don't understand what we're truly feeling, because if we tell our friends and family that we're depressed, but we have a roof over our head and we have good grades and we have good friends, it's very likely for them to say, we have nothing to be depressed about. But if you go see a therapist, they have studied and learned all the different reasons why somebody might be depressed despite having all those awesome things in their life. So that's the first reason. So the hour is spent for you, and your feelings are able to be validated. You're able to talk to somebody who understands you and gets it and can help you figure out the reasons that that's happening to you. The second reason why seeing a therapist is helpful is because we have a ton of tools and resources that we can help you with. So there's a ton of stuff out there that you can get, like self-help workbooks and books to read and reading blogs and watching videos, and all of that is very helpful to try to get your mental health on track. But when you see a therapist, you're paying for somebody to help you practice those skills. So contrary to popular belief, therapy isn't just sitting on a chair and venting for the entire hour. Now, sometimes that may be the case, and sometimes you may need that, and that is totally fine. But for the most part, on top of the venting sessions that we might have, we are also able to provide you with practice and tools and resources that we practice in session and then send you home with, so that you can practice on your own throughout the week. So that's very different, because again, if you talk to your family and friends, yeah, they may listen, they may be great listeners, and they may offer you a shoulder to cry on, but at the end of the day, they don't necessarily know the best course of action to help you come to some sort of decision on what to do. And therapists, we're not there to tell you what to do or what not to do. We're there to help you figure out all of your options, help you analyze all of those options, and then help you come to the decision that you yourself want to come to. But while doing that, we also provide you with tools and resources to help you if you're feeling depressed or anxious, I've made a few videos about some of the tools that I practice with my clients. And although you may find them extremely valuable, it's never going to be as valuable as if you were to come to therapy and actually practice these things with me in my office or with another therapist, because it's easy to read something and try to implement it, and sometimes we're really successful, but we will continue to go to those stuck points. And through therapy, we can start to identify patterns and try to see what's working and what's not, and what barriers are coming up for us and what we can do about those barriers. So that's the second reason. The third reason is through all of our practice and everything that we do. Well, what happens? What happens in our brain? Does something in our brain actually change through therapy? And the answer is yes. So some of you may have heard of something called neuroplasticity, and others may have not. What that is the connections that we make in our brain, how our brain responds to things. And when we're exposed to traumatic incidents when we're children or even as adults, there are physical changes in our brain. And we learn to cope in certain ways based on what we were taught and based on what we learn and observe in our environment. And some of it is survival. But once we're out of those traumatic experiences and we are in a state of safety, but we are triggered by something, we may still revert to those coping strategies that may not have been helpful, such as getting defensive right away, dissociating, being overly closed off and unable to open up to people. Those are all types of defense mechanisms that are learned throughout our life. And although they helped us get to where we are today, they're not necessarily helpful anymore. And as a matter of fact, they might be harming our mental health. So through therapy, we can have help to identify what are those coping skills that are no longer serving us, and how can we change that? And then with practice, what ends up happening is these little changes start occurring in our brain. So the way I can explain this to you is if you imagine this forest, okay? Imagine this forest, and you have a house in the forest, and then there is a school or a job on the other side of the forest. And every single day, you've been waking up and you've been taking road A to get to that school. Okay, it's a long road, it curves a lot, and you've been taking that road, so you think that that's the only road that exists. But then you start talking to somebody and you realize, hey, there's a shorter and faster and probably safer road, and it's the second road right here, right down the middle. So you're aware that there's that road, but because you're so used to taking that first road, every time you step out of your house, you just jump right into that first road. And then when you recognize there's that second road and you start making a conscious effort to go down that shorter, faster, safer pathway, you start making a little trail there. And that little trail is so light and it's hard to find the first time around because it's not very prominent. Whereas the first road is very prominent because we've been taking it all our lives. Through therapy, you start learning that there's this other road. And so slowly with help and support, you start making it wider and deeper and more prominent so that it becomes easier and easier over time to find that road and to take it straight to your destination, rather than having to take this longer road, which you thought was the only road out there. And that's the same thing that happens in our brain. Our brain has these roads that it connects to cope, to take care of life and how we behave and how we learn and how we talk to others. But then we start realizing that there's these other pathways, and it's not easy to try to change that right away. But through therapy and through practice, these other pathways in our brain start being formed and they become bigger and more prominent. So slowly over time, that older road, that older pathway becomes narrower and smaller and not as prominent anymore. And we start taking this shorter, faster, healthier road for us. And that's the difference. Because again, when you're talking to a friend or a family member, yeah, they can listen to you. Yes, they can be there for you. Yes, they can be supportive. But for the most part, they're not trained to help you figure out what other coping skills are out there that can actually serve to make you better in the long term. Serve to change those pathways in your brain. So those are the top 3 differences between talking to a friend and talking to a therapist. And honestly, I think everybody can benefit from therapy. Therapy is not just for somebody who is going through a crisis or has had a traumatic past. Therapy is for anybody who wants to better their life, anybody that knows that maybe some of the coping skills that they've been using hasn't been so helpful, and they would like to find new and improved ways to deal with those challenges or those situations that arise where we automatically jump into unhelpful coping strategies. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you learned something new, let me know. What did you get from this video? What other questions do you have? I would love to hear what you want me to make a video about next. I have been taking all of your questions and I have made a sheet, and I am going in order to make these videos. So if your video hasn't posted yet that you've asked me about, hang in there. It's coming your way. It just might take some time. But in the meantime, I will be releasing videos once a week, so you might find them helpful even if it's not your particular question. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you again next week.